No, don't press it harder. Right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Executive, and welcome to the member of the public in the gallery. Welcome. Pleased to see you here and hope you find our deliberations interesting. So without further ado, I'll move on to apologies for absence, please, Rachel.
Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Mrs Bowkett and Councillor Corey.
Thank you. They are both with us virtually, so obviously they hopefully will be able to watch and participate as necessary, but as they are not able to be with us in person, they will not be able to vote when we have votes, but welcome to everybody. And have we anybody else on screen who's going to be participating? Rachel? Is it just those? Is there any officers on screen?
We should have Mark Baxter, Ros Cordy and Pam Clipson joining us virtually as well.
Thank you very much. Very good. Okay, any declarations of interest which a councillor wishes to make? I'm seeing none, so we'll move on to item 3 then, which is announcements by leader, executive and executive directors. Are there any announcements? Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Chairman. As you'll be aware, on Friday we launched our series of Great British Summer events at Lincoln Castle with yourself, myself, Councillor Boothroyd and Councillor Corey. I just wanted to say we've had a fantastic reaction to those announcements, fantastic input from businesses who want to participate and from people wanting to sponsor and be part of the event. So we're expecting a fantastic season next year, and it will kick off with the Queen's Jubilee events at the beginning of June, with the Great British Outdoor Picnic over 4 days, and conclude obviously with Steampunk at the end of August. So I'm expecting great things for the castle, a huge increase in visitor numbers to the city, and I would just want to say that I think it's a great opportunity for our other towns around Lincolnshire to link to the festival in Lincoln and take advantage of marketing our great food and drink businesses. So I hope in saying that this morning that we will see an uptake and offers of support to make this a truly greater Lincolnshire event, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. That's great. Anybody else wish to make any announcements? I think the only 2 I wish to make is on Friday, of course, it was Lincolnshire Day, and we had a very successful event in the morning up at Normanby Hall with representatives from North and North East Lincolnshire, which again was very successful, and the castle event was a good follow-up for that as well, shall we say. So clear commitment that we will continue celebrating Lincolnshire Day every year from now on, and obviously build on the solid start we've had, and obviously the continued commitment for the 3 upper tier councils in Lincolnshire to work together and develop our devolution bid. We're still waiting to hear from government's details of that. There's a white paper due end of this month, we are told, so we'll know some more details, but we are getting ready so that we can put an offer of interest in for a devolution bid for Lincolnshire, which I think is long overdue, and I think we're all confident that we can actually, given the opportunity, make even greater strides for the prosperity and well-being of our residents. Also on similar vein, but not quite the same, we're about to sign a memorandum of understanding, or it will be signed this week, with the City of Lincoln Council to resolve the issue of the Usher Gallery. So we've reached an agreement, so again we can get to the situation where the Usher Gallery now can be used in conjunction with the collection building. So those 2 buildings together will hopefully increase the offer, so we get more footfall in both of those buildings, but at the same time give reassurance to the City of Lincoln that the heritage and the tradition and the bequest of the Usher Gallery are respected and looked after in the future. So there's 2 good items of progress there. Okay, if nobody else wishes to add anything more, we'll then move on to item 4, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 7th of September. Is it your wish that I sign these as a true and accurate record? Is that agreed? Nobody not agreeing? Okay, I will then duly sign that in due course. Thank you for that. Okay then, we now move on to the first substantive item, and it is an important item, which is the item 5, which is the invitation to join a working group on a geological disposal facility in eastern Lincolnshire. Just to remind us, and obviously I think we just need to give this item due consideration. This is not about whether we agree with this facility or not in East Lindsey at Thistlethorpe. It's whether we join a working group to then actually oversee, first of all, the activities of RWM, but also make sure that the local resident population are properly consulted and under the rules we have, whatever consultation and decision they will make is done properly and according to reasonable standards. So the issue before us today is whether we join this working group or not. Obviously, we don't join the working group. It is correct that they won't be able to proceed, but it's not necessarily. They could find another partner to do it. But anyway, so it's an important item, of course, a lot of interest, and it is a huge potential change for that part of Lincolnshire. So I think we just need to look through this very carefully. It has obviously been to scrutiny, and there's been quite a lot of media interest. So I presume Justin is, Andy, do you want to say anything straight to Justin? So you just want to run us through the paper, Justin, to start with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. So, as you say, this report concerns the invitation from RWM, Radioactive Waste Management Limited, to join a working group to explore whether Eastern Lincolnshire could be the location for a geological disposal facility. There are 3 recommendations in the paper: that the Executive approves acceptance by the Council of that invitation, that the Executive approves the Council taking up membership of any subsequent community partnership, and that the Executive identifies a councillor to represent the Council on the working group. And as you say, Councillor Hill, prior scrutiny has taken place in the Environment and Economy Scrutiny Committee, which was held on the 14th of September. And Councillor Wootton and I can refer to that later if it would be useful. I'd amplify the point that you made a moment ago, Councillor Hill. Joining a working group does not mean that LCC supports the concept of a geological disposal facility. And I'd also recognise that the working group is not where a decision would be taken about the facility. It's the local community, through a public test of support, who would determine whether the facility should be located in the area. As you'll see from the report, RWM believe that the geology of Eastern Lincolnshire could be appropriate for a geological disposal facility. And we know that Thistlethorpe Gas Terminal is located in that area. It's owned by National Grid, and whilst operating fully as a gas terminal, it's provided employment, business opportunities, and part of the reason for investment in flood defences in the coast. We've been advocating to National Grid that the site should continue to be used as an asset in the county. We're also aware that as well as RWM, there are other commercial energy interests in the site. So RWM are leading a government-sponsored project to deliver a geological disposal facility whose aim is to dispose of higher activity radioactive waste deep underground, safely and permanently. And on page 12 of the report, you'll see the initial analysis demonstrating that the conditions in Eastern Lincolnshire would appear to be favourable for the project and that there could be the option of the waste being buried offshore. RWM have indicated that a GDF, a geological disposal facility, could provide over 1,000 construction jobs and then several hundred permanent technical and skilled jobs. And it could also lead to investment in infrastructure, flood management, transport, road, training and skills. All of that initial analysis needs to be verified. So a working group is part of a defined government process. It's concerned with establishing and assembling all of the facts about a GDF. And on pages 13 and 14, you'll see the purpose of the group. And if the group recommends that a community partnership should be formed, the purpose of that too. As well as assembling information, the groups have clear responsibilities to advise on infrastructure, to set and shape community development grants, and to establish a community vision which identifies the infrastructure that would be required. As I said, flood management, transport, skills and road infrastructure have been identified as things that could be delivered as a result of this investment. And we know that in East Lindsey there is a requirement for investment of that nature. Businesses tell us their growth is affected by distance from markets, long-term youth unemployment in the area is high, the number of jobs outside tourism is limited. The community vision would stress the aspects that it believes investment should be made in. And given the role of the County Council in terms of place, in terms of people, in terms of environment, it feels right that the County Council should be influencing that community decision, making recommendations. Crucially though, the community partnership, if it's formed, will be the partnership which makes recommendations to the principal local authorities on whether to invoke the right of withdrawal and if and when to launch a test of public support. And so, given all of those issues, and given the point that you made at the start, Councillor Hill, about ensuring that we are monitoring the work of RWM and helping to provide a voice for people in the area, then I would recommend that the Council joins the working group. Related to that point, it's important that membership of the working group is somebody who can provide a clear overview of the factors which affect the whole area, the interests of the public, and indeed the investment requirements of the county. So, in summary, I'll summarise the paper. I assume you'll ask myself or Councillor Wotton to pick up on the scrutiny comments separately, Councillor Hill. In summary, the working group and the community partnership it's formed are critical to decisions about whether a facility should go ahead. They're also critical to providing the right investment if a public test of support were to agree to the investment. And therefore the recommendations in the paper are that the Executive approves acceptance by the Council of RWM's invitation to join the working group, that the Executive approves taking up membership of any community partnership that may be formed, and that it identifies a councillor to represent the Council on the working group and the community partnership it's formed. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Justin. So I think we'll move straight on to scrutiny comments. So I think we'll start with Councillor Wotton, because obviously there was a thorough meeting of your scrutiny committee, and if you'd like to update us to start with, if Justin needs to come in, with what consultation and what responses we've had. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Chairman. May I first start by saying a big thank you to the campaign group and their coordinator, Sarah Bright, for the way they conducted themselves on behalf of their community. I pre-arranged for Mr. Ken Smith to speak in the chamber on their behalf, and he put forward his case highlighting safety, loss of tourism and the danger to future generations, which you can see on page 7 and 8. Unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, only 5 members of the campaign group were allowed to sit in the public gallery. This council engaged with the campaign group in a positive and productive manner. Mr. Chairman, you have the comments of the committee before you, which had cross-party support. Comments from members of the committee emphasised the importance of being part of the discussion, which was likely to go ahead regardless of whether this authority participated or not. This was also an opportunity to engage with the support, the local community, and being consulted on whether they wanted to have this facility in their area. Members of our committee recognised that on face value the proposed project could potentially address issues around deprivation in eastern Lincolnshire. However, it was made clear that it was up to the residents to make that decision on whether to host a geological disposal facility in the future. Therefore, it was clarified that members held no view on supporting the plans to go ahead. Rather, members took a role to ensure that the local community had access to information and knowledge for a fair, balanced and fully informed decision to be made. The only additional point I'd like to put to you, Mr Chairman, is to consider to engage with the local parish town councils and local relevant bodies. And that's it, Chairman, that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So I don't know whether, Justin, you can just summarise, and obviously I've had some direct correspondence as well, summarise the comments we've had. If you could switch your microphone off, please, Councillor Wotton. Thank you.
So I would summarise the comments that we've received into 5 main aspects, Councillor Hill. The first one is whether we should or should not support the concept of nuclear waste, and we've been very clear so far in saying we do not have an opinion on that. We need to find out further information. The second point has been very much about ensuring that there is a platform for the community to be able to hear the comments that, for RWM to hear the comments that the community makes. And we have said to RWM that if we were to join working group, etc., then we would expect them to put clear communication routes in place with members of the public, websites, surgeries, dedicated phone numbers, etc. And of course, as Councillor Wotton says, recognise the importance of parish council involvement. We've explored issues around the impact on tourism and on agriculture. These are all areas that will need further exploration by the working group and the community partnership, though where there are similar operations elsewhere in the world, notably in France, we are aware that tourism and agriculture has been able to operate successfully alongside. And final comment has been about managing any risks and any regulation. And we are in conversations with colleagues within government who inform us that the processes that will be undertaken in determining any location, whether it is Thedlethorpe or elsewhere in the country, will go through the processes associated with national significant infrastructure. So environmental impact assessment, habitat regulation assessments, etc. So the comments that we have received so far are ones that we have started to address, though I would stress that we've been asked to join a working group as a partner. It is RWM who will be leading the work, and it's our job to try and ensure that RWM do it in a most effective way, should we choose to join the working group.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. So I'm going to go for comments now, and then we'll pick up some of the comments and all the rest of it. So I'm going to start with Councillor McNally, because obviously you, although it's not in your ward, it is right next to it. So obviously you have a local interest as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. I intend to speak. Thank you, Leader. I intend to speak as the adjoining ward member and incorporate also some of Councillor Sears' comments. I have received quite a few emails about the GDF, spoken to people and listened to representations being made to parish councils. It has been a mixed response for and against. Some of the comments received are, it has to go somewhere. It will help the local economy, particularly Mablethorpe. We switch the lights on, have medical treatment, and don't give a second thought to what is being used or how to get rid of it. People mention 700 million on the tourist economy, but how much of that is actually in Mablethorpe? The geology is not right for the area. Tourism will be affected. There'll be a 3-mile exclusion zone, lack of infrastructure, and that's why we moved there. House price falls. It's in a floodplain. What happens if it leaks? We should not be having talks with anyone regarding nuclear. It's generally accepted that a GDF is possibly the right thing to do, but is this area, which sits so far away from any generating facilities, the right one? I make no apologies for repeating what some people may have heard or seen already, but some of the other areas of concern and importance are RWM clearly state that a GDF should not be in an area where hydrocarbons are currently being exploited, have been exploited, or areas that could be. This policy is due to the risk of future civilisations accidentally drilling into the storage site. Saltfleetby gas field, which at one point was the UK's largest onshore gas field and is still operational, is close to Thelethorpe, and petroleum exploration licences are also to the north of the area, along with any gas deposits that have been untapped out in the sea. A property price guarantee scheme that ensures people are compensated for any property that has been devalued and allows them to sell. The guidance states that if a public test of support goes ahead, this could be 10 to 15 years away. 10 to 15 years is an unacceptable lot of time for uncertainty within the local area, not only for business investment, but also a worry for the many residents of Thelethorpe and the surrounding areas. The area that defines the public test of support is unclear and should be as local as possible. It is not right that people could possibly have a vote on a very important item living miles away from the area affected. If a public test of support was to take place, I would expect it to be run in the same way as an election, using first past the post system and nothing else. If 5 people vote and 3 say no, that's it. No percentage voting or sample polling to be used. Also, a clearly scheduled timeline should be sought with at least 6 months' notice to give everyone time to get out to communicate and campaign. And if the vote comes in as a no, a guarantee from the council that they will fully support the will of the community of Thelethorpe or anywhere within Lincolnshire. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So there's quite a lot in that, and I'm sure there'll be other comments as well. Perhaps we can just pick up some of them we've said. So I suppose the first one is this issue about the timescale and the uncertainty, and how that would just repeat what happens and just expand on. Obviously, potentially joining the working group, which will then translate into a community group. So, and there's some issues about the test of public support, and obviously that will be a matter for the working group, which probably is why we need to be in there to make sure this test of public support is fair and done properly. And of course, if the test of public support is a negative, the whole thing stops there and then. So that will be the key point, that we've got to make sure if we join this working group that it is done in a proper way. And I think the geography was also important. I think one of the key roles of this working group will be to establish the geography. So I don't want to add anything to that, Justin.
I think I would amplify one point around the test of public support, Councillor Hill. I've looked in great detail in the documentation that government have publicised, and in paragraph 644 of the Working with Communities policy, it says, the method for taking the test of public support will be decided by the community partnership as a whole. So I think that provides an opportunity for, if we were around the table, for us to respond to the points Councillor McNally makes about this being a first past the post decision. So the policy allows the community partnership to be able to set the way that that vote would take place.
Thank you. I've also had, just to, obviously people saying, well, the geology is not suitable, but again, you just cover that point. RWM feel it is, but the whole point of the exploration is to test that out. Can you just take your understanding of what would happen if we join the working group, and what RWM we think are proposing in terms of what will happen next?
So again, in the policy, there are clear steps set out, and the working group provides for a high-level piece of information to be explored, received, looked at, which seeks to understand at a high level, is the geology appropriate, is the location appropriate. If the working group identifies what they call a search area as a result of that, then there will be a series of pieces of technical research which need to be undertaken by RWM, under licenses to various parts of government. And the community partnership will ensure that the information about what is coming out of those is properly understood and communicated to the public. The information in the community policy says that a test of public support may be within 5 years. So I think may is a critical word in there, because we don't know whether that is will be or not, and it needs to depend upon all of the information being in place. But it is possible that that test of public support would not be as far away as the 10 to 15 years that the policy also says could happen.
Yeah, well, my personal view, if we join this working group, as soon as possible, because the uncertainty is an issue for everybody there. I mean, in one sense, the day doesn't happen. Can you just explain, Andy, about, they will have to get permission to do, some of this exploratory work could be boreholes, and there is some planning issues there that presumably will have to go through a planning process. And who is actually, if we eventually get to the stage of RWM applying for planning permission, who will determine that planning permission?
Thank you, Councillor Hill. As Justin's intimated, the process that would be gone through involves a series of technical pieces of work which would require licenses at various stages for those works to carry out. We haven't yet had the detailed conversation with RWM as to whether any of those localised pieces of technical work would be requiring of planning permission from either ourselves as the Waste and Minerals Planning Authority or perhaps one of the district councils. That's again a detail that the working group will hear. The ultimate issue is if a proposal comes forward, it would be submitted under a National Strategic Infrastructure Project, and that would be managed through the Planning Inspectorate. So as the County Council and as the District Councils, we would not be the ultimate decision maker on a planning application. That is a process that's set out by statute as to how those infrastructure projects work through. And again, there's almost a quasi-judicial approach to it where other interested parties can make their representations into that, including ourselves as the County Council with our planning hat on, irrespective of our other role in a community leadership role.
Thank you. But for example, if they want to do deep boreholes, they would presumably have to get permission from all sorts of people to do that.
Yeah, there will be a range of regulatory controls, including the Environment Agency and the Health and Safety Executive as well, to make sure that the practices that are used are effective and appropriate in terms of the relevant bits of legislation.
Thank you. And the other final planning one is obviously I've had some comments about, well, the original planning permission was for a certain purpose, and then that purpose is now over. Does that mean then in planning terms, obviously it's not our planning application, so it's in a sense not our problem, if you like, but obviously I think we need to be informed. So what is the planning situation there, please?
Yeah, so the current extant consent required the operator to carry out remediation works once the previous users had ceased. The process at the moment has been gone through to decommission the site, but in planning terms, the land area is still currently considered to be a brownfield site. So in planning terms, it's previously used land, and therefore it is appropriate for any developer, and Justin indicated there are other interested parties also looking at the potential use of this particular site, which would give them sort of like an opportunity to create a planning policy justification for why a use was appropriate. It's different from starting with a totally fresh greenfield site, which would raise a series of different planning issues at this stage. Until the remediation work is complete, as I say, it remains a brownfield site in planning terms.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, Councillor Davey, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not going to reiterate the points that Councillor McNally has made, other than to say that I have received a number of emails from residents and groups across Lincolnshire, and those points have been made to me, and I've read all those emails, and I thank people for sending them in. I'd also want to thank Councillor Wotton and the Scrutiny Committee for their diligent work in looking at this item and their recommendations in terms of what we should do today as an executive. I'm just going to touch on a couple of things. I mean, we've talked a bit about the potential benefits that could come if this site was located here. A GDF is quite clearly national government policy, and international government policy is now the recognised way of disposing of nuclear waste from nuclear facilities and high-grade medical nuclear waste as well. So we know that the UK is going to have this facility somewhere. For me, the tests that need to be undertaken are rigorous and need to be far-reaching in terms of arriving at the site that should be chosen. Thorpe will have a number of considerations, I believe, that will be testing. But I'm one for believing that we should be part of a working group that allows those tests to be undertaken so the public can arrive at a decision. And for me, the most important bit, it is the public locally who live in that location who should determine whether they live with this facility in the decades ahead. The benefits of a proposal for the coast, we recognise, I think all of us, that the coast is challenged in many ways. We know already that sea defences will need improving along the whole coastline. And for me, it's not just about Thorpe. Any GDF facility in this location is going to need coastal flood works all the way from Saltfleetby to Gibraltar Point, which is the strategy area we work with in terms of the Environment Agency. So this is going to require a substantial investment. And for me, that is going to be critical. The opportunity of jobs in an area that is poorly served with all year round employment, with low wages, which need to be higher if we're going to keep young people here. There are opportunities quite clearly, and I think, you know, real possibilities to regenerate Mablethorpe going forward. However, it comes down to one simple thing. We need to be round the table to shape the discussion, and we need to be able to guarantee for the public that they will be the arbiters of the final decision. And the only way to do that, I believe, is for me to propose that you, Martin, as leader of the council, sit on the working group as our representative, because I think it needs that voice at the most senior level to give confidence to our communities and to ensure that RWM and government do not railroad a decision through without that community test, which is binding and final as far as I'm concerned. So I will propose that we move the recommendations to join the working group, and I'd like to propose you, Councillor Hill, as our representative on that working group.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Is that proposal seconded, please? Thank you, Councillor.
Yes,
Oh,
I'd
sorry,
like to
Councillor.
second that, yeah.
Right, thank you. We've got two there, so take your pick. Thank you for that, Councillor. Any further comments, questions before I... Yes, Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Leader. I don't intend to repeat what's been said. I mean, I have no issue in principle with nuclear power generation. It makes a great deal of sense. I think where my scepticism creeps in is when you read some of the proposals that have come out of RWM around jobs and infrastructure. I'm not convinced that we can trust a great deal of it. You know, if call me a cynic, the government as a whole doesn't always have a great reputation for sticking by its promises. So I think we need to be very mindful. But I would echo exactly what Councillor Davies just said, that I think unless we're at that table, I don't think any other organisation has significant or sufficient weight to hold organisations like RWM to account. And it's clear, because I've received the correspondence as well, there are some very real concerns about the locality of the selection and the election process. I think Councillor McNally articulated that well. And I think unless we're sat there as a member of the working group, there isn't that, or dare I say, honest arbiter to make sure that some of these things are listened to. Because the harsh reality is, even if we don't join the working group, this potentially can still go ahead. So I think this is a tent that we need to be on the inside of.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's very valid. In terms of, and I think you're right, and the working group will have local representation, an independent chairman, of course, who probably won't be from Lincolnshire at all. And although, yes, I'm not local to that area, I'm very passionate about representing all of Lincolnshire, because we're all here not just to represent our own areas, but all to the interests of the whole county. So there's no question that, and there are concerns, because, you know, like any developer, developers make all sorts of claims about lots of things, don't they? And the whole point of this test, we need to make sure that these claims are properly and thoroughly examined, and obviously people will be given the opportunity to check out whether what they're saying is actually the case. On that point, I mean, can we just walk through the, let's say, either the geology is found not to be suitable, or it becomes pretty clear that we would no longer wish to be part of it or support of it. Can you just walk us through what happens if we wish to, say, withdraw from the working group and thereby sort of collapse the whole project? So can you just walk us through what could happen?
So there is a process which can occur at any time, which is called the right to withdraw. And what it would require is agreement from both of the principal local authorities.
Can you just explain what you mean by principal local authority?
So the policy for community involvement indicates that local authorities who are around the table, who have certain representative roles, would be described in the process as principal local authorities. So I would see that as being... It is, although East Lindsey as yet are going through a process similar to this. So it would be down to both of the principal local authorities to decide whether to withdraw. The process also suggests that it would be best practice to consult the community in taking that decision. The process also includes some reference to mediation to ensure that the correct information is available. So that could lead to a situation where we say this is not able to happen, or the benefits are overstated, and at that point both principal local authorities would need to consult with the public and to then inform RWM and the Secretary of State over a desire to withdraw.
Thank you, that's pretty clear then. So this isn't sort of a one-way street, so to speak. So there is the opportunity, but obviously things like if the geology, for example, wasn't suitable, well, everyone assumes RWM would not proceed any further. But we just need to be clear what the process is then. So, have I got anybody? Yes, Councillor Woolley.
Thank you, Chairman. This is probably getting a little bit into the minutiae, but it's running on the theme of timescales and uncertainty as well. And if you will just bear with me for a moment. A practical example from my childhood, and it's not in Lincolnshire, was when my family home was part of runway number 5 for the proposed new London airport. And from certainly from a child's point of view, but from a family point of view and the surrounding villages that was going to affect, it was the length of the process and the worry and the concern about what was going to happen. And I noticed that one of the very well thought out emails that I've received queried the distance in time between the setting up of a working party and then when it, my words, morphs into the community partnership. It is not until the point that the community partnership comes on board that any funding streams then go into the community. And it's for me, it's the gap, it's that time length, it's those time scales. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on those, please?
So typically a working group would take between 6 and 12, perhaps 18 months to operate. We know from the correspondence that we've received that uncertainty is a very important issue, and it would be down to us to say to RWM and to fellow members of the working group, we want to ensure that decisions are taken in the working group when the information is available, but that should be made available as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And that feels like something that we would wish to insist upon if we were to join the working group. This is an important issue. It's important for the locality, it's important for the country, and therefore it should be given the right level of importance and pace to deliver what is the right information to allow the working group to take its decisions about transforming into a community partnership, if that was what the information said.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I think that the uncertainty is, you know, I think as soon as is practically possible, we need to move on and get so at least people know what's likely to happen. Although whatever happens, it won't be for some time, and we are talking, you know, 10, 20 years, but at least when people, as soon as possible, know what's likely to happen, they can make their plans, because I quite agree. There's nothing worse than that uncertainty. I mean, obviously, Justin, can you just explain the, and as Councillor Woolley talked about money being made available. I don't think it should have any bearing on our decision at all, but just for the completeness of information, there is, I understand, there's talk of money being made available to who and when.
So part of the process includes a community grant programme for the search area, up to £1 million made available for community groups in the first instance, and then when boreholes start taking place, that would increase to £2.5 million. It's a significant amount of per annum, yes. And I think it's important to stress up to. It's a significant amount of funding for a community to absorb. So there is a role for the community partnership, and there is a role for people like the local authority to do everything we can to ensure that if that money became, or when that money became available, that it was focused on things which matter to the community and which can help to prepare the way for economic and social opportunities in the future years for that area.
So that will be when the community group is set up, not the working group?
So the community partnership sets the framework for the grant programme. So I'm just looking through the community policy at the moment, but my understanding is that the £1 million kicks in at community partnership, and then the 2.5 million a year would be when the drilling starts. I will confirm that for you though.
That's fine, but and just to be clear that there is no sort of, none of that millions or 2 million will be coming to the county council or anything like that.
It's for community projects, and I suppose the other thing is it's not returnable money. So if we were to withdraw, or if the public test of support said no, the initiative is not supported, that money would still have been invested in the community.
Thank you. But as Councillor Davies said, there are broader issues in terms of coastal defence and criteria that government uses to support coastal defences, but also other issues about however this stuff is going to get there. There will be issues for transport enhancement and other things which I think would need to be, as a consultee, the county council would be very keen to make sure happens. So I think that's something we should also bear in mind. So that is quite an important facet. I think one of the key roles of this community group will be the area in question, the search area or whatever, and I think I very much take the point. The people who decide, as Colin Davey has said, shouldn't be, you know, people the other end of Lincolnshire. It should be the people in that search area, so to speak, and that will be one of the first jobs of this working group, to establish what area we're talking about and who has the say. And it, you know, my personal view, but obviously I'll be only one member of the working group, is that should be reasonably close by, but not very tight, but so it's a reasonable understanding as who will be affected by it. And obviously we wait to see the details. We've all seen the very smart presentations and videos of stuff going underground. Again, that all needs to be tested out as we would with any developer. Okay, does anybody else wish to contribute any further? Councillor Boutroyd.
Thank you. It was more just a question on the actual drilling, and do we have timescales of how long that might take? And I'm assuming they're looking for the geology the best type of geology to actually form the tunnels and the structure under the sea, rather than anything to do with the type of waste that's been stored down there.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, in the policy, it's expected that the drilling will take a significant amount of time. The chart in the policy is looking at a technical assessment which includes borehole drilling, which may take as long as 10 years. So it is a significant amount of time. I can confirm, just relating back to the grant funding point, I've just checked, the grant funding would become available when the community partnership is formed.
I was speaking to a geologist who knows this sort of stuff, and he said they know fairly quickly, as soon as they start drilling, they'll know the geology. What takes the time is getting the permissions and the licenses, which Andy Gutherson, that is a long process, and obviously quite rightly so, that all the agencies, the Environment Agency and others, need to be assured that this is done safely and properly. So I think the drilling itself is fairly boring, is quite quick, and I think as soon as you've done your borehole and drag it out, you can see what the geology is because it's all there. But getting to the stage of doing it is the lengthy process. But again, hopefully that will be done as quickly as possible to either rule it out or keep it in play. Because if, as Councillor Woolley said, if it's with a load of uncertainty and it's not suitable, well, sooner everybody knows, the better. So again, I think that's an issue for RWM to actually look at. And I think bluntly, sometimes the processes can get a bit laborious in terms of just let's get it done properly so people know where they stand. Okay, have I got anybody else who wishes to comment or anything else? Just go around, I can't see. So the recommendations are there, just excuse me, on page 10. There are 3 recommendations. One is that we approve the acceptance of the council to join this working group, and then we accept the invitation. Then B2 is we take membership of this community group, and it has been proposed and seconded that myself will be if 1 and 2 are agreed, we will go to 3. So first of all, can I take 1 and 2 together? So all those in favour of recommendations 1 and 2, please show. Okay. Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? One abstention. Thank you. Thank you for that. And then recommendation 3 then is identify a councillor. Has been proposed and seconded that it is myself as leader of the council who is that representative. All those in favour, please show. Again, anybody against? No. Any abstentions? 1 abstention. And myself, I'll abstain as well. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much for that. That's good. So we've got that resolved. So I was going to pause the meeting, but obviously as the member of the public, I don't think we need to do that. We can carry on and with the main agenda. So I'm now moving on to item 6, and hopefully Councillor Corey is with us on screen. Can somebody confirm that? So obviously I'll just let her, because obviously she's here. So Councillor Corey, right, I'll hand over to you. This is some changes to the fire and rescue specialist equipment.
Yeah, it is. Good morning, Chairman, and thank you. I'm probably going to steal Mark Baxter's thunder, but I'll go ahead anyway. Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue provides a number of technical response capabilities which it needs when responding to certain emergencies which require equipment non-standard equipment which isn't carried by its fire appliances. And these include equipment needed in bariatric rescue, for example, rescue from heights, large transport vehicle incidents and animal rescues. And as part of Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue's ongoing programme to ensure that our operational response, as identified in the Integrated Risk Management Plan, is delivered in the most appropriate and cost-effective way, all our operational assets are assessed and reviewed as part of a scheduled replacement programme. And you'll see from the paper that the current provision has a range of technical responses which are located across the county. And following a review of performance information, Fire and Rescue has put together a heat map of responses using historical data, the risk profile of the county and the competency requirements of the various capabilities. So as a result, a number of changes to this provision and location of the capabilities have been identified, and these have been set out in the paper. So I'll hand over to our Chief Fire Officer, Mark Baxter, to take you through further details. Thank you.
Thank you to Councillor Corey. I'll just go through the summary report, if that's okay, Chairman, in regards to the summary of the report.
That's fine.
Thank you. I'll just, first of all, if it's okay, I'll just touch on what the recommendations we are proposing for the executive. And the first one is to approve the operational changes that we've specified within table 1 of the report. The second recommendation is to approve the capital schemes business case for the expenditure of the capital budget of just over 1.2 million for the replacement of the vehicles and equipment. Recommendation 3 is to approve the carrying out of a procurement to secure the replacement vehicles, equipment and associated assets. And then recommendation 4 is to delegate to the Chief Fire Officer in consultation with the Executive Councillor to take all the decision details, steps necessary to give effect to the above decisions. So if it's okay, I'm just going to go through a summary of a bit of a background and the rationale for some of the changes. So as Councillor Corey has identified, within our capital programme, we've come to a point where we have had a replacement programme for our existing rescue support units, our existing technical rescue vans and our command support vehicle. So through our integrated risk management plan and our community risk profiling, rather than just going straight for a like replacement of those vehicles and equipment, we did a substantial piece of work to ensure that we understood where our actual risks across the county for how we meet the needs of these technical incidents, and ensure that we've got the best placed assets, equipment, people, vehicles in the right place to be able to respond to those risks. We've historically had the current assets in place for anywhere between 10 and 20 years, depending on the type of vehicle and asset we're talking about. And they've been fairly static in where we've located them. However, what we see through our community risk profiling is actually the needs of the people of Lincolnshire and how we respond has changed, it has evolved. We're responding to slightly different incidents. We're getting more information, intelligence data about where those risks lie. But also, which I think is just as important, is we're getting clear indication of where the future risks may lie in regards to the demographics of the county of Lincolnshire. So what that's brought us to is in relation to the main technical capabilities that we're focusing on, and that's in regards to animal rescue large, bariatric response, heavy rescue response, large transport, technical road rescue, water rescue and command support. We're now proposing a far more intelligence-led location of those assets across the county. What it's mean is that in some areas there will be a reduction in some of the teams. In some areas there will be an increase in some of those assets in various stations. But actually the blended approach is this proposal will ensure that we've got the right assets with the right type of vehicles and the trained personnel in the right location that has a blended mix of being able to respond to the risks that we've identified within the county, but also it's managing that we've got a more future-proofed way of ensuring we can maintain the competence of our trained firefighters to ensure that they can maintain those capabilities. An example being there is no significant benefit of putting all of our technical response assets all in one location, because actually the time and the commitment it would need for people to maintain their competence would be disproportionate and wouldn't allow them time to be operationally available, because there'd be too much commitment in regards to maintaining their training competence. So there is that blended approach in regards to how we've analysed where we put our resources. We've I think some of the highlights areas which are probably more a significant change, which I'd just like to tease out, if that's okay. One is in regards to our water rescue assets, because again, this is quite an important area for Lincolnshire in regards to our risk profile. Over 10 years, nearly about 12 or 13 years ago actually now, we initially had a significant investment from DEFRA to enhance and provide a dedicated water rescue response, which meant that we had funding to provide 10 water rescue teams, which were called Type B teams. And what those Type B teams were almost the full capability that you would want within a water rescue team. That gives you all the right equipment, that gives you trained personnel to enable us to have powered boats that are able to operate in all types of water rescue. What we've understood and learned over the years, over the many flooding incidents that we've had within the county, is actually we've had to evolve what our actual need is, and it isn't always that we require full powerboat operations, but what we actually need is more low-level water rescue assets, such as boats that don't have engines, such as inflatable pathways and inflatable sledges that enable us to almost wade through the water to ensure that we can reach the residents that are in high risk and bring them out of the flood water. So what that's really meant is that we've focused on what is the actual risk and the needs of Lincolnshire. So we've been able to reduce that commitment across the county. It's also ensured that we are managing to uphold our responsibility to provide national resources in the event that there are wide-scale mass flooding events in other areas of the country, which we have often supported. And the benefit of that is that obviously when we have wide-scale flooding within the county of Lincolnshire, we rely heavily on our national resilience assets, and very often we bring in counties from across the country to come and support us in our times when we're required to respond to wide-scale flooding. And then another area where we've recognised that we've had a capability for a number of years, where we've evolved and we feel we don't require it in its current form, is our technical rope rescue. And technical rope rescue is a dedicated team that is split between Skegness and Sleaford, and that was built on many years assumptions that for us to be able to support rescues from height and other technical rescues, that we needed a very highly skilled, dedicated technical rope team. Evolution in our other rope rescue capabilities, and also the evolution and the investment that the County Council has already given us in regards to our enhanced area ladder platforms, means that actually we can provide this same capability in our existing other capabilities. So we feel that the technical rope rescue isn't required anymore, and actually the historical data has also confirmed that over the last 5 years it hasn't been mobilised and we haven't required it. So we're comfortable and confident actually the evolution of other technologies and other capabilities does bridge that gap for us. And I just probably want to touch in regards to the funding of it. In regards to the capital programme that we've got, what we was proposing is the current capital programme, that is the replacement of the two rescue support units, the 7 technical rescue vans, our boat fleet, and also our command support, comes to the total of the 1.28 million. What our proposal is to pool that capital programme to be able to provide the vehicles that would be able to meet the needs of the proposals in regards to where we want the new technical rescue units to be located. If it's okay, Chairman, is it okay if I pause at this moment in case, because I'm conscious of there's an awful lot of detail that that the report does contain, especially from the consultations that we've gone through, and also in regards to the area where we've presented to the scrutiny committee and the comments that have been identified from scrutiny. If there's an opportunity to open for questions.
Yeah, well, I think we'll thank you for that. So I think, yes, there is a very comprehensive report about all the, in the appendices. It tells you everything you need to know about all these services. So I think we'll move to the scrutiny. I don't know who is Councillor Parker. I'm not sure whether you were lined up. So I'm not sure. Who have we got? A scrutiny officer in the room? Yes. They're in the report there, but I don't know if anybody else has further comments for that. Okay then, so questions, comments. So there is a lot of information in here, and it's Councillor Bradwell, thank you.
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I see that obviously it looks to be a 4-year plan, and obviously agree with we need change when you found that a vehicle needs to be somewhere else, and our county is huge, so it's not like being in a very small area and you can get there in 20 minutes. But I just wanted to ask, obviously if in the next couple of years you found that there was an issue, you talk about moving some vehicles to the coast and that, but if there was a need to change, is there flexibility in your plans? And I think there will be, knowing how you work. But I just wanted to ask that question because, you know, as we know, everything changes, and obviously we've seen quite some dramatic flooding over the last few years, obviously in Wainfleet and other areas. And I just wanted to know that, you know, you're going to be flexible, and if there was a need to change what you've put in front of us today in a small area, that would be done.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Absolutely, and you're right in what you're saying. This is a 4-year plan in regards to our integrated risk management plan. What we also do is we have an annual review of our risk to ensure that it is still accurate and fit for purpose. But absolutely, our operating model is based on the fact that we have the flexibility and agility to move assets around the county as we see fit in regards to meet the needs and the risks. So this paper is predominantly around being able to have the appropriate assets, vehicles and equipment within the service. And actually the identification of where we want them is absolutely about meeting the risks that we've got at this moment in time. But through our annual review, and then actually after coming up for the 4 years for our integrated risk management plan, when we do a far more deeper risk analysis of future proofing, then absolutely we have the ability to move our assets around the county as required. And absolutely, to give your assurance, that is based on what is going to be the needs of the people of Lincolnshire and how we can best support that. And that's the benefit of having our 38 fire stations located across all areas of the county, that we do have that ability to move them around as and when required to meet those exact needs.
Thank you, Chairman. Mark, I suppose the query that I have, it's page 26 when we're talking about water response, that you haven't got a response for what the Stamford area. You've got a capability that you're going to rescue type C, that you're going to hold stuff in Bourne, but I'm a bit surprised with the River Welland running through both Stamford and Market Deeping that you haven't got something sited a little bit nearer to the Welland.
Absolutely, Councillor. I mean, across the county, there's many towns that do have watercourses that do present always with a level of risk. In regards to the Stamford area there, we've not seen historical data where we've had a particular risk in regards to there. But also, what I would also caveat there, it doesn't mean that we haven't got any capabilities. All of our frontline firefighters and personnel on every single station are trained up to what we call as a level D water rescue response. So that does enable them to be able to do certain levels of water rescue. That means that they've also got dry suits, they've also got floating lines, and they've got inflatable hoses that will enable them to carry out water rescue capabilities. The water rescues that we're talking about now are enhanced water rescue capabilities that include the boats and other associated equipment. So yes, absolutely recognising that there are towns across the whole of the county, and Stamford absolutely being one of them, that do have watercourses that require a response. But again, to the level of risk that there is in that area, all of our firefighters are trained to a degree they will be able to carry out water rescue, and they've already got the equipment on all the stations that are going to enable them to do that as well. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of assurance in regards to that area.
Yes, I mean, just in terms of mobilisation of these, how does that happen? And I suppose the obvious question is, when you actually look at the appendices, apart from the large transport, the numbers are exceedingly low of call out of these 1s and 2s. So I presume you've looked at other ways we can give the cover, because as you've just said, obviously all firefighters are trained to a certain level to do their best, but in certain circumstances. So I suppose the question is really, is there another solution, bearing in mind the very low use that we put to this, most of this equipment?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what we've been gone through the review, and that's the reason why we've and I'll probably use the word downgraded what the proposal will be. So we have changed in regards to how we respond, particularly into water rescue. As currently, when we had the initial funding, the capability was at the level where it met pretty much every single level of water rescue that could be required. Absolutely, we've recognised the demand and the risk isn't as high in some areas, which was first articulated. So our focus has been more in regards to the floating craft, the boats without engines, and also the enhanced skills that we give on regards to all of our firefighters with throwing lines, inflatable hoses, inflatable paths, that actually we can respond to without mobilising the full
sorry,
teams.
Mark, I wasn't just referring to the water, I was referring to many of the others, which you look at the chart in the appendices, it's 1 or 2 a year. So I'm just wondering, have you actively considered other means of providing that cover, not necessarily from within the county? So I'm just asking, have you considered that across the piece?
Yeah, sorry, absolutely, Chairman. Apologies for that. The other area that we've done is we've been in consultation and discussions with all of our neighbouring authorities, and actually there's some of the areas which do border some of our other county fire and rescue authorities. We discuss what capabilities they've got, and particularly in regards to the round of the south of the county, we have those professional discussions in regards to what assets they can provide for us in a timely manner. So it's not just about what Lincolnshire are providing, it's also about what our neighbouring authorities can provide. And we also we do have been discussions with our other Category 1 partners in regards to military and also in regards to the voluntary sector, particularly when we're looking at protracted incidents that will obviously are be going on for a longer period of time. And when we've got links in, particularly through the LRF, where we can provide additional support. A really good example would be within large transport. And if we have incidents that could be ongoing for a period of time and that we need significant heavy lifting capabilities, then we have links into other partner agencies that can provide that for us.
Right, thank you for that. So just on, obviously there is a proposal here for a capital expenditure of 1.2 million. I mean, obviously, Andrew, I mean, just to explore because obviously, yes, there is this issue of the need and the risk assessment. It's not straight, but obviously there will be a process where the bids, just to explain how this bid will be assessed in terms of the need.
So thank you, Leader. So obviously, we have had this through the sort of officer group where we've asked some of the similar questions you've asked today, actually, to be fair, and sought assurance on that. So as the paper outlines, the capital investment is within the existing programme. It's just that reprofiling it for these new priorities that have been identified. So, and that's why it's sort of come to you today. So I haven't got anything further to add to that other than that assurance that it has been through that officer process as well and had that similar sort of rigour that you've applied as an executive.
At the moment, we're delegating to the Chief Fire Officer and the Fire and Rescue portfolio, but you're just going to oversee it from a financial, because we know we're going to be entering into a very difficult financial period, so we need to make sure whatever we do spend is rigorously tested and made sure we absolutely do need it.
Yeah, sorry, Leader, I probably misunderstood your question slightly. So that, yeah, there's a regular monitoring process as well in terms of ensuring that continued purchases such as these on a programme are rigorously tested and monitored, and to ensure that they are fit for purpose as well, which we'd be doing. We're applying that to other block budgets as well within the programme too.
So, for example, we are monitoring as of a need. Scrutiny is scrutinising capital bids, if you like. So I'm assuming that through the scrutiny process, that will be looked at through that as well.
Yep.
Just because it's within the budget doesn't mean to say it just has to happen.
No, that's
so I'm
correct.
sure that Councillor Parker's there listening, so hopefully he will be keeping an eye on it. Okay. Anybody? Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Betroyd.
Thank you. It was you slightly picked up on it, Councillor Hill, with regards to the removal of the heavy rescue and large transport from Lincoln North, and I just wondered whether, with the bypass getting busier and busier around Lincoln, etc., and it's not uncommon for HGVs to overturn on some of the roundabouts, whether we need a facility around there. I know we mentioned about using other third parties, but I just wondered whether taking that facility away from Lincoln is wise.
Thank you, Councillor. So in regards to those capabilities there, where we've done the heat mapping and where we've looked at where our risk is, we feel comfortable that the best location at the moment is in regards to the Grantham, Boston, Louth area. That's combined with all those areas. The decision away from Lincoln North does also balance in regards to the training commitment that's requiring on it, but also what I'd like to probably just to be clear, the capability that Lincoln North have at the moment is quite limited in regards to it. So it's currently what we see is almost a supporting role in regards to how we are providing that response. The proposals in regards to the enhanced capability of the heavy rescue and large transport will actually give us a more robust and fit for purpose capabilities. But again, what I would also always caveat, councillors, as you quite rightly identified, with the way that the Lincoln bypass and any other future infrastructures are being developed in and around the county of Lincolnshire, and it links into the previous councillor points, we have that flexibility to move the assets around if we see that there's going to be an increase in need in the Lincoln area and the surrounding area. So we do always have that option to move it back into Lincoln North or Lincoln South if we require it, depending on how we can see the demand playing out.
Just on that, I mean, just to explain, because normally I presume the fire, you will get involved if there's a perceived risk in terms of pollution or safety, but I presume normally whoever owns the vehicle will have to, somebody will, because there's no shortage of stuff, lifting equipment in the country actually to lift these things out. So typically if a lorry, and it does happen quite a lot now with overturns, we don't turn out every time, do we? Normally we just expect the owner or the traffic management people to do that. I don't, Andy, whether you can help us on that, what normally happens?
It depends on the nature of the event and where the ownership and control actually is. So often it's actually the police that are actually leading on actually resolving the issues on our network. And obviously, as you're aware, around Lincoln, part of that network is the National Highways responsibility, not ours as well. But it is the police who lead in the first instance. We obviously work closely with them to make sure that the blockages and delays on the network are minimised as much as possible.
Thank you for that. Yep. Yeah, because obviously the Grantham, the A1 isn't our responsibility, is it? So I think there is a genuine question there in terms of that, Mark.
Yeah, I recognise the question. Yeah, really what we're talking about, our response is always going to be first and foremost when there is a life risk involved. We're not talking about us responding to every incident or accident that happens on the roads, and then even if it's coming to a position where it's either blocked the road, etc. The capabilities we're talking about is when there is a life risk or a time critical life risk where we need to respond timely and effectively to ensure that we can get people to safely. While we're there on scene, we absolutely work with other agencies, and we, for want of a better term, hand over the responsibility in regards to if there's any requirement to move the vehicles, etc., to ensure that the highways are kept clear. Clearly, while we're on site, we will work closely with the partners to achieve that objective, because we also want to ensure that we can support the infrastructure of Lincolnshire and keep the traffic moving where we can. But absolutely, that isn't our responsibility. The focus that we're talking about in regards to this capability is purely when there is a life risk, or if there's a significant environmental risk as well. So if there has been a significant spillage of a contaminant that we can respond to, and either to do an initial bunding or diversion, or any ways that we can reduce the risk of contamination, we would also respond in that means as well.
Okay, anybody else wish to contribute? So that, as stated, the recommendations there are on page 21 and 22, I believe. That's correct, isn't it? Yes, 21 and 22. I think Mark did, there's 4 recommendations there. All those in favour, please indicate. It's carried, is it? Right, thank you. And no, it was unanimous, was it?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, moving on then to, I think we're now going to buses, aren't we, I believe? So let's have a look. So, Councillor Davies, or do you want to go straight to Anita Ruffle?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I think times have changed since the government's much vaunted national bus strategy, which is leading to the creation of the bus service improvement plans. Here we had, in essence, 2 choices: either go down an improvement plan route or a franchise model, which isn't appropriate for rural Lincolnshire. I think the reality is, everybody would agree we want a better bus service. This is the government's methodology for getting that. I think there's a careful path we need to tread, that it isn't just a wish list of things that would make lives for bus operators better, but it's about getting more use of the public transport network. I mean, not that I wish to pour kind of cold water on the bold ambitions. I would point out to members, I think the financial position the nation now finds itself in means that a lot of what will come out of this process, in terms of a lot of the good work that's gone into it, perhaps will remain as aspirational, but I will pass over, I think, to either Nicole or Anita, who can talk us through the detail and carries the scars from the negotiations, may I say.
And that's titled Bus Back Better. Better? Okay, sorry, I'll start again. So the report explains the requirements of the National Bus Strategy, which is titled Bus Back Better, and that was introduced by government in March of this year. The strategy requires all local transport authorities to establish, as Richard said, either a franchising scheme or an enhanced partnership. Both options are intended to be a mechanism for improving the local bus offer. Just to be clear, the County Council does not currently qualify for the franchise option, as it's neither a mayoral authority or have responsibility for planning policy. So our option is the enhanced partnership. Failure to establish an enhanced partnership would see the council and its bus operators forego any share of the £3 billion pot that's been set aside for delivering the strategy, as well as potential loss of any sort of future transport development funding. The Lincolnshire Enhanced Partnership, which we'll have to establish, requires the collaboration of operators, districts and other key stakeholders, and it has to be formally in place and starting to actively deliver by the 1st of April next year. Prior to this, the Council is required to produce a Bus Service Improvement Plan, or BSIP as it's regularly referred to, and that has to be done by the 31st of October. So in about 3 weeks' time. And the report before you seeks executive approval to prepare and publish that BSIP for Lincolnshire. But given the tight deadlines, delegations also being sought for the Executive Council of Highways, Transport and IT to determine the final form of that BSIP and to approve its submission to government on or before the end of this month. As part of the process for developing a BSIP, we've been conducting a range of engagements with operators, districts, the LEP, and the wider community to establish what improvements, what is it they want to see from bus services in this county. The report details for you a number of schemes and measures that have been proposed through that engagement process. But I would just stress, and it's the point Richard alluded to, it's important that we realise that not all of the individual schemes and locations on that long list, if you like, will make it into the final BSIP. Some may not be required, some may be considered not to be feasible once evaluations have been concluded over the coming weeks. So that was very much the wish list, if you like. But what we can identify is the sort of key themes that will be contained within the BSIP. And those themes align with the themes that the government indicated it wants to see in every BSIP. So some of those themes include things like attracting and supporting transport resources within the county. We'll need to, one of the targets will be to stabilise the current network post-COVID, and only then should we then be looking for sort of service enhancements, potentially having sort of, more frequency, longer operating days, etc. We'll look to have more consistency in bus stop infrastructure. We'll look to evaluate and then introduce some selected bus priority measures, particularly in some of the main urban areas. It'll want to address hotspots within our market towns, and we can do that through sort of robust traffic and parking management. And the expectation from government is that there will be a range of sort of fares and ticketing schemes and solutions. One of the solutions for Lincolnshire that we're looking for is to align the age of eligibility for child fares across the county, because that's quite important, and at the moment it's a bit of a mixed bag. In addition, all BSIPs are required to provide a decarbonisation roadmap for greening their bus network. As well as a passenger charter, so that spells out what standards everybody who uses services can expect. The BSIP is essentially going to be a high-level bidding document against which the government will make decisions on how the National Bus Strategy Fund is distributed. At this point in time, they have not declared what the mechanism is for scoring those submissions. But as Councillor Davis did stress, Lincolnshire's BSIP will need to carry a clear caveat that each scheme proposed, unless expressly stated otherwise, can only be taken forward if sufficient DFT funding is forthcoming. So that will be strongly stated in there. Following submission of the BSIP, the Council will then need to pursue the statutory process for an enhanced partnership and scheme. The timetable for this is extremely tight and unfortunately cannot be achieved if the Executive or Executive Councillor decision making is to be accommodated at all stages. And for reference, a copy of the indicative timetable is included for you at Appendix A. So this report therefore seeks authority to delegate decision making of the initial procedural steps, i.e. the notices and consultation, to the Executive Director of Place in consultation with the Executive Councillor for Highways, Transport and IT, so that we can ensure the Council's internal decision making process is as responsive as possible. But that'll take us right up to the carrying out the public consultation. Finally, just to stress, the Executive or Council approval will be sought to formally make the Enhanced Partnership and Scheme, and that will be in March 2022.
Thank you very much, Anita, for that. Questions, comments, please? Yes, Councillor Bradwell.
You talk about trying to, I don't know whether you're encouraging or making bus companies go greener. And bearing in mind some of our bus companies in Lincolnshire are quite small family businesses, you know, what if they can't afford to do that? Do they then not work for the council? I just wondered where you go on that. I mean, I have to say I've got a diesel car and it's a wonderful diesel car. Yeah, yeah.
I'll give you my ill-informed comments first, then I'll pass over to Anita to give you the grown-up answer. I think the first thing I'd say is I think we need to be careful when you consider the levels of profits that businesses, even in Lincolnshire, are making in the public transport space. I think I'll be candid. I think a lot of the claims of poverty are a little bit exaggerated, and I think for too long their default response from the public transport network in Lincolnshire has been to hold their hand out and expect the taxpayer to foot the bill, while candidly at times being very comfortable spending a lot of money themselves on other things. And I think one of the things I'll be saying to Anita and the team is if the private sector expects the taxpayer to fund everything on this list, then to a certain extent they're in for a shock. And I will be asking, okay, you're expecting the taxpayer to put in X amount of money, what are you going to put in? Because there are some very wealthy companies that run buses in Lincolnshire, so I think we need to be mindful that we shouldn't continue to subsidise them beyond the level of which is required. And I think when you look at the age of the vehicles in particular, it's fair to say that some companies in Lincolnshire have not invested well over recent years. And it actually, in my view, as somebody who travels on the bus up from Grantham occasionally, holds people back from using it. Because the experience on a long journey in Lincolnshire on some public transport isn't great, because you're driving, I'm looking for Anita for numbers, but sitting in 15 or 20-year-old buses isn't that unusual. But there'll be a more detailed response. But that's my gut instinct.
Come back, because I wasn't expecting the public purse to pay. What I was saying was I think we would see businesses just probably go out business. That's all I was saying.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. I mean, we've seen Stagecoach taken over recently, and we're seeing changes in the marketplace. But I think the reality is there is still, especially by managing it carefully in terms of the home to school contract, there's still, I mean, we spend thick end of £30 million a year through the kind of the public transport network on schools, for example, school transport. So there is a lot of money in the system. I think it's right that we should make it operate better, because that will enable people will make people more likely to use it, which can only be a good thing. But the reality is the big beneficiaries directly of more people using the buses are the bus companies that run it. So I think it's only right that they should also come to the party in terms of helping to almost map out an investment plan that we can all get behind, rather than yet again us just writing cheques and, you know, more sports cars and big houses being bought.
Anita, did you want to come back?
Yeah, just very briefly, I think there's some good points made there. I mean, I think the one thing to stress is, yes, it's a partnership, and that, in my mind, means everybody brings something to the table. The ability for some of those operators, clearly they can afford to invest in vehicles, but some genuinely can't, and the very small family-run businesses. So there will be a balance. Councillor Davis is right about the age of the Lincolnshire fleet. It's on average it's between 13 and 14 years, whereas the national average is about 8.5. So we have to do a roadmap. Okay, so I think the reality for Lincolnshire is we're not going to see Lincolnshire's bus services all turned to, you know, electric or hydrogen vehicles in the very near future. We're talking decades away. But what we can do is we can do those sort of stepping stones. And so what we'd look to do is things like trying to clean up the existing vehicles that we've got with, you know, particulate traps, etc., so that they may only be a Euro 3 vehicle now, but you can make the, you know, their carbon and the emission standards improve to about a you know, Euro 5, Euro 6. So that would be our first step, and then we would work with each of the operators to you know, bid when these there is funding that's made available for electric vehicles, etc. So we'd help those smaller firms to bid for that. But yeah, reality check. You know, a BSIP and the partnership doesn't have a timeline. So the reality is some of these measures we're talking about are potentially a long way off, and as I say, would be subject to funding.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an issue. There's always a temptation to think of the brand new shiny stuff. And sometimes is it not better just to make sure you get what you've already got better? And you sometimes wonder with some of these ideas that, are they ever met? Does anybody think about the rural aspects of counties like Lincolnshire, where we have totally different challenges to inner cities, shall we say, and all the rest of it? I just want to focus, because I am concerned, you know, what we are committing to here. On your summary on page 101, final sentence, this is a statutory process as set out in the Bus Act and commits the County Council and the operators that sign up to the partnership to deliver on what is contained in the plan. So does that mean then that if what's in the plan, if the government agrees to fund it, that's great and we will do it? Or does it mean that we still have to provide it even if the government doesn't give us the money, which would seem to be highly unreasonable?
I think the plan will be worded in exactly the same way as the BSIP. So it'll have that caveat, which will say, you know, basically we, the undersigned, will agree to deliver so long as the funding is available. It's not clear yet whether or not we will have the detail around the funding pot prior to the enhanced partnership paperwork having to go in, essentially. So the government recognises that and is giving advice to local authorities to make sure that they've got those safeguards in, so that they're not going to be held, you know, to deliver things and where they haven't got the financial wherewithal to do it. So those safeguards will be in there. We won't deliver unless we've got the finance.
Sorry to keep butting in, I apologise. I think just to add to that, I think we need to be clear, because there will be a lot of pressure from operators that, oh, well, the DFT haven't given you the money, but, you know, speak to that chap Andrew Crooker, because he's got all that money under his mattress. Why don't you spend some of that? So I think we need to be very clear, and Anita's right, we actually won't know how much they're giving us until after we've put in our proposals, which is helpful. They would say, look, unless this money comes as part of the MBS from the DFT, then we're not going to be able to do it. Because it's actually not fair to pretend to people we're going to. Because as we know, the next few years are going to be really tough financially, and we're going to have to potentially make big changes to our capital programme as it stands. We certainly can't be writing blank cheques at this stage.
Excellent. Yeah, well, that's good. So I think, yes, so obviously Council's proposal is the recommendations there on page 102, basically that we approve the preparation of the bus service improvement plan, look at themes and all the rest of it, delegate to Councillor Davies, who's obviously already put his eagle eye on it, to work through the details, and then note the timetable and the various statutory processes. And as you've said, it will come back for a public decision as what is finally decided to go put forward in March. So is that agreed? All in favour, please show. I think that's unanimous, isn't it? Thank you. So that's thank you for that, Anita and Nicole. Right, okay, we move to the final paper now, which is an Ombudsman Report, which we are required to actually report on his findings and our response to the findings. So I'll ask, do you want to go straight to Glenn, or you want to?
Well, I just wondered, I thought Wendy might be joining us.
Yeah, well, Wendy's on the screen, so I don't know.
So I didn't know whether she wanted to do it, but...
I don't mind who does it. Sure, Glenn, do you want to start off, and then the ladies will come back to us when they've decided who's doing what. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So this is a paper that, under a concern from the Ombudsman, that was raised as a public notice against the Council back in 2016-17. It's been to the Executive and to scrutiny in 2018. And the latest position of the Council was taken by Councillor Bradwell on advice, which was that the Council would not be able to accept the Ombudsman's recommendations, but that we would want to review the position within a couple of years, and that was taken in 2018. Councillor Bradwell, as portfolio holder at that time, was advised that the Council would find it very, very challenging to deliver on the Ombudsman's recommendations, notably at the cost of implementing those recommendations. In the intervening period, the Council has worked very hard across finance, Serco, adult social care, to make a number of improvements with respect to our processes. And we now believe that at a very low cost, it would be possible to introduce those Ombudsman's recommendations. It's also, I think, material, Leader, to recognise that the Prime Minister's announcements on introducing a cap on national insurance contributions a couple of weeks ago are material to this issue, because it will increase the number of people who want to come to the Council for, as it were, advice and information with respect to finances. We currently do some 12,000 financial assessments a year. That's likely to double in 2023 as a result of the Prime Minister's announcements. So getting this right is really important, not just for the existing people we're supporting, but for all those people in the private market that will be coming forward. I think it's also important to note that we have probably another year and a half to get this right, and that it will also be a material consideration as the Council negotiates with residential providers later this year on future rates. We do know that the residential homes market considers the move from net to gross payments a major and significant element in their negotiations with us about future rates. So it's for a number of reasons, probably something that the Council should be pursuing and doing so with all due haste, Chair. I don't know whether Councillor Bradwell or Councillor Boker or Pam wants to contribute.
Councillor Bradwell.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I'm just standing in for my sisters. Sorry about that. Yeah, this did happen on my watch, actually, so perhaps it's right that I do sit here and explain. But obviously, as Glenn said, the first letter we got from the Ombudsman was in 2018. And obviously, he's written again now because we've not done as he's requested. I do think it is important that we do get the IT sorted out so that we can move to gross versus net. Obviously, it's something that does happen in most places across the country, I feel. So, and as Glenn has said, we have got to renew our contract with the residential homes, and obviously this is a key thing for them. Obviously them recovering money from family is much more difficult probably for them than us. So I do think it is something that we do perhaps now need to press ahead with, because 2018 is quite a number of years away. I do understand we've had problems, you know, getting the IT and the processes in place, but I do think we do need to now do that. I don't think it'd be good for the council to get another letter from the Ombudsman, although he seems to like writing to David. So thank you very much. That's all I've got to say, Mr. Chair.
Glenn, you kept saying the council getting it right, and I understand what you said about probably pragmatically now this is probably the way to go. Just to clarify, and looking at paragraph 1.8 on 124, we're actually talking about guidance, so I need to be clear that we did nothing wrong. We followed the Act and we made a choice, a local choice, to do it a certain way, which the Ombudsman disagreed with. So I'm bluntly a bit concerned that I presume the Ombudsman's going to be giving us the money to do all this, is he? Or, I mean, I didn't remember the Ombudsman being elected to Lincolnshire County Council, but perhaps I've missed something.
Thank you, Leader. So, no, the Ombudsman wouldn't be in a position to allocate any resources. That's for the Council to decide. And you're right, Leader, the Council is democratically elected to make decisions, often very difficult decisions, and it is guidance from the Ombudsman. I think it would be fair to say that subsequent to the Ombudsman's original report, it is quite clear that the residential homes market does consider the move from net to gross to be a significant contributor to future fee rates. So it would help the council moving in that direction and members in terms of managing future pressures.
I accept there is a local decision-making choice, but I think the issue is, I think this time we agree, well, we accepted the Ombudsman's recommendation, but we can't get to a situation where the Ombudsman starts deciding our policies for us, because we have very difficult decisions to make, and so I think there's I don't want to fall out with him, but I do get, if this keeps happening, we begin to wonder what it is. But I just want to be clear, anybody in this room goes away thinking we did something wrong. No, we didn't. We made a choice. Might have been the right choice or the wrong. It was a local choice, and we had to do that in terms of our funding envelope and all the rest of it. And it was about guidance, and guidance is not the legislation. And if guidance becomes we all just obey national guidance, well, we might as well not bother getting elected. And civil servants and ministers can try and run local services as best they can, and I dread the thought of that happening, frankly. Okay, right, so the recommendations there that we are on page 122, that we accept the findings set out, basically, and there's an explanation. So is that agreed? All in favour? Please show. Thank you. Unanimous. Good. Well, with that, then, that concludes the meeting. Thank you for your attendance, ladies and gentlemen. I do believe there will be a presentation. We'll have a break now for 10 minutes, and then I think there's a presentation, isn't there? Okay, thank you for that. Thank you.